Hi, my name is Jerry Williams, and this is my Cassutt 111M Sport Pylon Racer. I decided to do this video. I was inspired by a fellow by the name of Tony Spicer, and he did the same thing for the Sonics, and I thought that was a really interesting walk-around type of video to try to explain this little airplane and to talk about it a little bit. Well, this is my airplane. I bought it as a project in 2011 or 12. I forget what year it was. I think it was 12. And it was skeleton. The wings were done. It had some fabric covering on it, and then I went on to finish it. When people ask me about this airplane, they always want to know how fast it is, and I'll say it is pretty quick. My version is probably not the fastest out there. They race these things at Reno, and they put some pretty exotic wings on it, and they're going around the pylons over 250 miles an hour. Mine, it'll do 200 on a calm day, full throttle, and it is just it's a joy to fly. The second most often question asked is how does it handle? Is it really squirrely? That maybe they've heard some horror stories about the design. I don't know. But I usually tell people that it's a very honest airplane, and by that I mean it'll do exactly what you want it to do and what you tell it to do, and it won't do any more and it won't do any less. And by that I mean when you're flying it, it's pretty much fingertip flying, and if you say you're looking at a chart or something, you take your eyes, it's hands-on, eyes out flying. You take your eyes off of what you're doing and your hand inadvertently moves a little bit, it'll go there and it'll stay. It's pretty neutral. It's pretty neutrally stable. Unlike a Cessna, where if you say put it in a bank, it'll start to right itself. That's a good stability trait. These airplanes are, if you put it in a bank, you gotta stop it, and it won't return to your previous flight attitude. It just stays there. You've got to return it physically. And so it's not a demanding airplane, but it is fast. Things happen a lot faster than new pilots are used to. And I'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. It's steel tube fuselage and with a fabric covering. It's a synthetic fabric, and the wood, or the wings, are wood. They're built out of mahogany and spruce, and they're also covered with that same fabric. It's got full span ailerons, and that makes it really good. It has a really good roll rate with no flaps. And the reason it doesn't have flaps is because if you put flaps on it, it tends to, people have done it on these models, and it tends to blank out the horizontal stabilizer. So that's a bad characteristic to be on final, and the horizontal stabilizer isn't as effective as you'd like it to be. So no flaps. Very, very simple airplane. It's simple construction. It was designed in 1951 by Tom Cassutt, and it's still racing today, and the plans are still offered. The owner of the plans right now is starting to build up a little shop over there on the west side of the Cascades. I'm currently located in Prosser, Washington, and I work for Fairweather Flyers as an A&P mechanic. You don't need to be a mechanic to build one of these things, but it does help. But that's not saying you can't gain the knowledge in order to build this. It's a very straightforward, plans-built airplane. So to kind of go over the speeds, my stall is 65 miles an hour indicated. My takeoff, liftoff off the ground is at 70, and you don't want to really do anything under 130 miles an hour, because at that slow of a flight regime in this airplane things, it's not as effective as if you're going over 130. And there's a really neat article that was written in the, I think it was the 70s, about this airplane, and you know, they said the same thing: don't do anything under 130 miles an hour. So my climb out, I tend to let it build up to 150, and just because it's a very tightly cowled airplane. The engine is very tightly cowled. There's not a lot of space in there, and things heat up pretty quickly. So flying one of these is really a management in heat management, you know. Fuel wise, I hold 15 gallons, and I only like to fly it about 2 hours at a time, because then I start getting a little uncomfortable, because it is like strapping a go-kart onto you and going away like that. There's not a whole lot of room in the cockpit to move around and stretch out or anything like that. So 2 hours is about a good enough flight. The wingspan on mine is 17 feet. The plans offer a 15-foot wingspan for racing, but that's not to say you can't build a 15-foot wing or a 17-foot wing to race or do sport flying with. Mine's a sport flyer, and it's not a show winner, but it is a fairly, I'd say I fly it once every 3 days. So I'm currently in a test flying phase, and I just got done doing a lot of work to the engine and just sort of tweaking things a little bit. There was a little bit of rubbing and all that, you know, just typical growing pains of airplanes. So had a couple of leaks that I replaced some gaskets on, and yeah, I'm gonna test those out. So what I'd like to do is go film a couple of touch and goes, just to kind of show you what this plane will do and what it won't do. I got a pretty cool GoPro camera mount in there, and it's right at eye level, so you'll see exactly what I see when we're flying the airplane around. And oh, let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the approach. My approach speed, I've got it down to about 105 miles an hour, and I fly downwind about 140, 150, and then base is 130, and then when I turn on the final, I slow it down to 105. So I like to be at 105 coming over the fence, because as you can see, this airplane sits pretty low to the ground, and the deck angle gets pretty steep when you get below 105 miles an hour, and you'll tend to drag the back wheel at 100 miles an hour. The tail wheel is so small, I just don't like doing that at all. So I always do tail low wheel landings in it, and it's not the airport guy here, after he saw me fly it first time he saw me fly it, he said, 2 observations, that thing's pretty fast. I said, well, yeah. And the other observation was, it's not a short field airplane. It's not a short field airplane. I will not land on a runway that's under 2,500 feet, just because I don't like getting on the brakes that much. These will tend to tip over on the nose if you're really aggressive with the brakes. So, and this airport here at Prosser is 3,700 feet, I think. So, you know, I just kind of let it roll, and I hardly use any brakes. So, you know, if you got the runway, why not use it? You know, for grass fields, I don't know. I haven't tried it, and I'd be kind of reluctant to try it because I got wheel pants on. These wheel pants are pretty low to the ground, and I don't want to tear them up. So. It hasn't been washed. You're seeing it in its raw form. There's bug splatters all over it and all that because, well, I'm still testing it. So I've got almost 14 hours on it in my quest to get 40 hours in the test flight. And what I like to tell people, they're like, why don't you just go fly it? Well, you know, you're still building it when you're test flying it. You're still tweaking it, and you know, that's just the way it is. So I've got my operating limitations from the FAA say I got a 60-mile radius, so I can go quite a ways. I've flown down to the Dalles, I've flown up to Ephrata. I haven't gone east too much. I've dropped it into Yakima and Pasco, you know, to get a little tower practice and stuff. And, my version is VFR night. That means it's heavier than a lot of them out there. Its empty weight is 650 pounds. Max gross is 950. And a lot of the racers, you know, they're under 570 and all that, but they tend to be pretty much bare bones. I can go fly up to Seattle if I wanted to, fly through Class B airspace. I got a transponder and, you know, radio and all that. That's required to fly through there. So. That's the main reason it's a little heavier, but it is pretty fun, and that's kind of what I hope you see. And for you guys building the Cassutt or Cassutt, I keep doing that. You know, it's been asked, how do you pronounce the name? It's C-A-S-S-U-T-T. It's Cassutt, and it's a 111M, and that, I think that came from Tom's first N number. So my N number I chose, it's a little flying 944, you know, it's a little Porsche. So the 94 on there really has no significance. I looked up to try to find a racer that had 94 on it, and there wasn't any Formula One racers that had 94 on it that I could find. So I put it on there. It's just the first two numbers of my N number. So I just wanted to make it look like a racer looks like a little bit. And as I go along, I'll probably collect some stickers and throw them on there and stuff. But anyway, I'll pause this and get ready to fly, and I'll mount the camera, and we'll get ready to go.